Let me ask you a question, and I want you to really think about it. When was the last time you felt like you were winning? Not just succeeding, not just getting by, but genuinely winning, operating at the top of your game, feeling that flow where everything clicks and you're unstoppable. Keep pausing. For most people, that feeling is rare. Maybe it happened once during a great project at work, maybe in college when everything made sense, maybe never. But for Richard Feynman, that was his default state for decades. He didn't just win once. He didn't have one breakthrough and then fade away like so many brilliant people do. He kept winning, over and over, in physics, in teaching, in problem solving, in life. Nobel Prize, check. Revolutionary discoveries, check. Best teacher anyone had ever seen, check. Author of best-selling books, check. Cracked the Challenger disaster when NASA couldn't, check. Ice walk across stage. And here's what's crazy, he made it look effortless. While everyone else was grinding and struggling and burning out, Feynman was playing, having fun, and still beating everyone. How? How did he build a mind that never stopped winning? That's what I'm going to show you today. Because Feynman wasn't born this way. He built this, deliberately, with specific practices and principles that anyone can adopt. And I'm going to break down exactly what he did, not just tell you inspiring stories, though there will be plenty of those, but give you the actual blueprint, the specific mental architecture that made Feynman unstoppable. Because here's the thing, you can build this too. Maybe you won't win a Nobel Prize, but you can build a mind that keeps getting sharper instead of duller, that keeps solving problems instead of being overwhelmed by them, that keeps winning instead of just surviving. Let's start with the foundation. The very first thing Feynman did that changed everything. Forget intensees. He refused to accept anyone else's thinking as his own. Let me tell you what I mean by that. Most people go through life with borrowed thoughts. They believe things because their parents believed them. They think things because their teachers taught them. They accept ideas because experts said them. Their minds are filled with other people's conclusions, other people's frameworks, other people's limitations, not Feynman. Share this a story when Feynman is a kid, maybe 6 or 7 years old. His father takes him for walks. And during these walks, his father does something unusual. He doesn't just point at things and name them. He makes Richard think about them. They see a bird, and his father says, "See that bird? What do you think it's doing?" Richard says, "It's pecking at its feathers. Why do you think it's doing that? Maybe to clean itself? Maybe. Or maybe to get rid of parasites. Or maybe just because it feels good. How would you figure out which one?" Pause it. You see what's happening here? His father isn't giving him answers. He's teaching him to think, to observe, to question, to figure things out for himself. And this becomes Feynman's operating system. He doesn't accept, he investigates. He doesn't believe, he verifies. He doesn't memorize, he understands. Feynman's direct statement, this is the first piece of the winning mind. Radical intellectual independence. Most people outsource their thinking. They let the world tell them what to believe. And then they wonder why they're stuck, why they can't solve problems, why they never break through. Because they're not thinking, they're repeating. Feynman thought. And that made all the difference. Let me show you what this looked like in practice. This story is one of my favorites. Tell this with energy. Feynman is at Princeton, working on his PhD. And there's this tradition where physics students challenge each other with difficult problems. It's like a game. Who can solve the toughest problems? Most students prepare for this by memorizing formulas. They study past problems. They learn the standard approaches. They're trying to have the right answers stored in their heads. Feynman doesn't do this. When someone gives him a problem, he doesn't search his memory for the right formula. He derives what he needs from first principles. Right there, on the spot. Engsart gesture working it out. And here's what's amazing. He often solves problems faster than the people who memorize the solutions. Because he's not searching through mental files. He's building the answer in real time from basic principles he deeply understands. His classmates think he's showing off. But he's not. He genuinely doesn't see the point in memorizing things he can figure out. Make the point, this is intellectual independence in action. And it gives him two massive advantages. First, he actually understands what he's doing. When something changes, when a problem is slightly different from what he's seen before, he can adapt. The memorizers are lost. Feynman adjusts and keeps going. Second, his understanding gets deeper every time he uses it. Every time he derives something from first principles, he reinforces that understanding. He's building strength. The memorizers are just accessing stored data. They never get stronger. Let's walk to the other side. So the first piece of building a winning mind is this: stop accepting other people's thinking. Start thinking for yourself, from the ground up, every time. Now let's talk about the second piece. And this one is going to challenge you. Feynman built his mind by deliberately seeking confusion. God, let that land. Most people avoid confusion. Confusion feels bad. It feels like failure. It feels like you're stupid. So people run from it. They stick to what they already understand. They avoid topics that confuse them. They give up when things get unclear. Feynman ran toward confusion. He sought it out. He loved it. Why? Because he understood something profound. Confusion is where learning happens. I explain this. When you're comfortable, you're not learning. You're just reviewing what you already know. You're staying in place. But when you're confused, your brain is encountering something new. Something that doesn't fit your current mental models. Something that requires you to think differently. That discomfort, that's growth. That's your brain building new connections. That's your mind expanding. Feynman didn't just tolerate this, he engineered it. Share this story. There's this amazing moment at Caltech. Feynman is already famous. He's got the Nobel Prize. He's a legend. And he starts attending biology lectures. His colleagues are confused. Why are you going to biology lectures? You're a physicist. Shouldn't you focus on physics? And Feynman says something interesting. He says, I'm bored with physics problems I know how to solve. I want to be confused again. I want to feel stupid again. That's when I'm learning. Pause, Think about that. A Nobel Prize winner actively seeking situations where he feels stupid, deliberately putting himself in uncomfortable learning situations. Why? Because he knew that's where growth happens. That's where his mind would expand. That's where new insights would come from. Get direct. Most people, the moment they achieve success, they retreat into what they know. They become experts in their narrow field and they stay there. Safe, comfortable, stagnant. Their minds stop growing, and eventually they stop winning. Feynman never did this. He kept putting himself in situations where he was a beginner, where he was confused, where he had to struggle. And every time he did this, his mind got stronger, more flexible, more capable. Give another example. When he's in his 60s, Feynman gets interested in computing. Not because he needs to use computers, he can do all his calculations by hand, but because he's curious about how they work. So he starts learning theory of computation, algorithms, computer architecture, and he's confused. This isn't his field. He doesn't have the background. But he leans into it. He asks questions. He struggles through concepts. He lets himself be a beginner. And from that confusion, from that willingness to not know, he makes breakthrough insights about quantum computing that computer scientists had missed. But make the point clear. This is the second piece of the winning mind: embrace confusion. Seek it out. Let yourself struggle. Let yourself be a beginner. Because every time you do, you're building new neural pathways. You're expanding your capabilities. You're becoming more than you were. The people who avoid confusion stay the same. The people who embrace it keep growing. Which one are you? Now let's talk about the third piece. This one is tactical. This is about how Feynman actually processed information differently than everyone else. So get into teaching mode, and Feynman had this thing he'd do. When he encountered new information, a new concept, a new theory, anything, he wouldn't just read about it or listen to it. He'd immediately try to explain it to himself in the simplest possible terms. Not just understand it, explain it as if he were teaching it to a child. And here's the key. When he got stuck, when he couldn't explain something simply, he knew that's where he didn't really understand it. Tell this story. There's this famous incident. A student asks Feynman to explain why certain quantum particles behave the way they do. Fermi, Dirac statistics if you want to get technical, and this is basic quantum mechanics. Any physics professor should be able to explain it. Feynman pauses. He thinks, and then he says, "Let me prepare a lecture on this for freshmen. I want to explain it at that level." He goes away for several days, and then he comes back and says, "I couldn't do it. I couldn't explain it simply enough," which means we don't really understand it. Let that land. A Nobel Prize winner admitting he doesn't really understand something. Not because he lacks knowledge, but because he holds himself to a standard of understanding that goes beyond equations and jargon. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it. Make this practical fee. This became Feynman's test for everything, and it's incredibly powerful. Because when you try to explain something simply, you can't hide behind complexity. You can't use jargon to mask confusion. You can't skip over the parts you don't really get. You're forced to actually understand deeply, completely, from the ground up. And this does something amazing to your mind. It builds what I call true understanding as opposed to surface knowledge. Contrast, these surface knowledge is when you can repeat what you've heard. You know the terms, you can pass a test, you can sound smart in a conversation. But true understanding is when you can explain it to anyone, when you can apply it in new situations, when you can connect it to other concepts, when you can build on it. Surface knowledge makes you temporarily informed. True understanding makes you permanently capable. Point, Feynman built true understanding of everything he touched. And that's why he could solve problems nobody else could solve. He wasn't working from memorized formulas. He was working from deep understanding that he could manipulate and apply in novel ways. So the third piece of the winning mind is this: always translate knowledge into simple explanations. If you can't explain it simply, you don't really understand it yet. Keep working until you can. Now we get to the fourth piece, and this one is about energy management. I walk across stage. Here's something nobody talks about: Feynman never burned out. Never. Think about that. This guy worked on the atomic bomb under insane pressure. He solved some of the hardest problems in physics. He taught thousands of students. He wrote books. He served on committees. He investigated disasters. Decades of intense intellectual work. And he never burned out. Never lost his energy. Never lost his edge. How? Because he understood something that most people miss. Your mind needs play to stay sharp. Tell the story with passion. After Feynman wins the Nobel Prize, something interesting happens. He gets depressed. Not because he's disappointed. Winning the Nobel Prize is incredible. But because physics has stopped being fun. It's become serious, important, about his reputation, about living up to expectations, about being Richard Feynman, Nobel Prize winner. The joy is gone. And without joy, even genius-level work feels like grinding. So one day he's in the Caltech cafeteria, and he sees a student throw a plate in the air. The plate wobbles as it spins, and Feynman thinks, "Ha! I wonder what the relationship is between the wobble and the rotation, the gesture, the motion." And just like that, he's interested again. Not because it matters, not because it'll lead to publications or awards, but because it's interesting, because it's play. So he works out the physics of the wobbling plate, just for fun, just because he's curious. And from that play, from that return to joy, comes some of his most important work. The work that won him the Nobel Prize in the first place grew out of these playful explorations. Vazir, to slow down, this is the fourth piece: your mind needs play to stay in a winning state. Most people think productivity means constant seriousness, constant focus, grinding, optimizing every minute. And what happens? They burn out. Their minds get tired. Their creativity dies. They start making worse decisions. They lose their edge. Feynman never made this mistake. He built play into his life deliberately. Bongos, drawing, safe-cracking, working on random physics problems that didn't matter, exploring biology just for fun. People thought he was wasting time, but he wasn't. He was maintaining his mental energy. He was keeping his curiosity alive. He was preventing burnout. Get direct, and this is crucial for building a winning mind. You can't be on all the time. You can't grind constantly. Your brain isn't a machine. It needs variety. It needs play. It needs things that are interesting for their own sake. When you give your mind this, it rewards you with better performance when you need it, more creativity, more energy, more insight. When you don't, it shuts down. You might still be productive in a mechanical sense, but you lose the edge. You lose the magic. Action item: what do you do just for fun? What do you explore just because it's interesting? What do you play with that has no practical purpose? If your answer is nothing, you're sabotaging your own potential. You're draining your mental battery without recharging it. Build play back into your life, not as a luxury, as maintenance, as fuel for your winning mind. Let's move to the fifth piece. This one is about how Feynman handled being wrong. And it's completely different from how most people do it. Our share this of Feynman loved being wrong. No, seriously, he loved it. Most people hate being wrong. It feels like failure. It's embarrassing. It threatens their self-image, so they avoid it. They defend their positions. They rationalize. They double down rather than admit error. Feynman did the opposite. When he discovered he was wrong about something, he got excited, because it meant he was about to learn something. Tell this story. There's this moment at Los Alamos. Feynman is young, in his 20s, and he's working with Niels Bohr. The Niels Bohr, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, a living legend. And Feynman disagrees with him about something. Most young physicists would keep quiet. You don't contradict Niels Bohr. That's like contradicting Einstein. But Feynman speaks up. He presents his reasoning. He argues his point, and Bohr explains why Feynman is wrong, completely wrong, and Feynman immediately accepts it. Oh, you're right. I see now. That makes sense. Pause. No defensiveness, no ego protection, no rationalization, just immediate acceptance and learning. And here's what's beautiful. Bohr respects him more after this interaction, not less. Because Feynman showed two qualities that Bohr valued: the courage to think independently and the humility to admit error, make the point. This is the fifth piece of the winning mind. Treat being wrong as valuable data, not personal failure. Most people conflate being wrong with being stupid, so they protect themselves from ever being wrong, which means they stop learning, they stop growing, they stop winning. Feynman separated his ego from his ideas. His ideas could be wrong. That didn't make him wrong. It just meant he had new information to integrate. Forget practical. Every time Feynman discovered he was wrong about something, his mind got sharper. Because he updated his understanding, he corrected his models, he refined his thinking. The people who are never wrong, they're not actually right all the time. They're just not updating their thinking. They're staying static. And in a dynamic world, static means falling behind. The winning mind is one that updates constantly, that treats errors as course corrections, not catastrophes. When's challenge? When's the last time you admitted you were wrong about something? Not just agreed to disagree, but actually said, I was wrong. I see that now. Thank you for correcting me. If you can't remember, your mind has stopped updating, which means it stopped improving. Now we get to the sixth piece, and this one is about how Feynman built his knowledge base differently than everyone else. Efre explained this. Most people accumulate knowledge like they're collecting stamps. They learn something here, something there. Disconnected facts. Isolated concepts. They have a lot of information, but it's all in separate boxes. Feynman built knowledge like a web. Everything connected to everything else. Every new piece of information got integrated into his existing understanding, creating new connections, new insights, new possibilities. Let me show you what I mean. Share this example. Feynman learns physics. Obviously, that's his field. But he doesn't just learn physics in isolation. He connects it to everything. He learns biology and thinks, how does physics apply here? How do quantum mechanics explain biological processes? And he helps found the field of biophysics. He learns about computing and thinks, how do physical laws constrain computation? And he invents the concept of quantum computing. He learns art and thinks, how does light and color work? What's the physics of perception? And his understanding of both art and physics deepens. For his gesture connections, every new thing he learned connected to multiple other things. His knowledge wasn't siloed, it was networked. And the more connections he built, the more powerful his thinking became. Because insight happens at the intersection of ideas. Innovation happens when you connect concepts from different domains. Problem solving happens when you can draw on multiple frameworks simultaneously. Make it clear, this is the sixth piece: build a networked mind, not a filing cabinet mind. When you learn something new, don't just store it. Connect it. Ask, how does this relate to what I already know? What principles does this share with other things I've learned? Where else might this apply? Every connection you make strengthens your understanding and increases your capability. Feynman's mind was so powerful not because he knew more facts than other physicists, but because he had more connections between what he knew. He could see patterns others missed. He could apply insights in unexpected ways. He could solve problems others couldn't even frame properly. But what's your point? That's what a networked mind does. And you can build this too. Every time you learn something, Spend 5 minutes connecting it to 3 other things you know. Force yourself to find the links. Over time, you'll build a knowledge web that's far more powerful than any collection of isolated facts. Let's talk about the 7th piece. This is about how Feynman maintained his edge over decades. Hey, get serious. Most people peak in their 30s or 40s. They do their best work, and then they coast. They might stay productive, but they're not breaking new ground. They're not making breakthroughs. They're trading on past insights. Feynman kept making breakthroughs into his 70s. His mind never stopped getting sharper. How? Because he never stopped being a beginner. He never stopped learning completely new fields. Share this as in his 60s, Feynman essentially starts over in biology. He attends undergraduate biology lectures. He reads basic biology textbooks. He asks naive questions. He's willing to be the guy who doesn't know. The guy who needs things explained. The beginner, and this keeps his mind flexible, sharp, young. Weather explain. When you become an expert in one field and stay there, your mind optimizes for that field. You get really good at that specific type of thinking. But you lose flexibility. You lose the ability to think in fundamentally new ways. But when you regularly put yourself in beginner situations, you maintain that flexibility. You keep building new neural pathways. You keep expanding your capabilities. Make it practically. This is the 7th piece, never stop being a beginner. Always have something you're learning from scratch. It doesn't have to be related to your career. In fact, it's better if it's not. Learn a musical instrument. Learn a language. Learn to paint. Learn about ancient history. Learn about mycology. Whatever interests you. The content doesn't matter as much as the process of being a beginner, of struggling, of being confused, of building new understanding from the ground up. That process keeps your mind sharp, keeps it flexible, keeps it in a winning state. A challenge. What are you a beginner at right now? What are you learning from scratch? If the answer is nothing, you're letting your mind calcify. Start something new this week. Now we're getting to the 8th piece, and this one is subtle but incredibly powerful. Slow down, Feynman had this unusual relationship with success. He pursued it, but he wasn't attached to it. Let me explain what I mean. Sucker tell this story. When Feynman is working on quantum electrodynamics, the work that will eventually win him the Nobel Prize, he's not thinking about Nobel Prizes. He's not thinking about awards or recognition or career advancement. He's thinking, this is interesting, I want to understand this. I want to figure this out. The work itself is the motivation. The understanding is the reward. The high contrast this says, compare that to most people. Most people do things for the outcome, for the degree, for the promotion, for the recognition, for the money. And here's what happens. When you're focused on the outcome, the work feels like a grind. Every day is just a step toward the thing you actually want. You're not engaged with what you're doing. You're just enduring it to get to the result. And this makes you worse at the work, because you're not fully engaged. You're not curious about it for its own sake. You're just trying to get through it, make the point. But when you're focused on the work itself, when you're intrinsically motivated, the work feels different. It's engaging. It's interesting. It's its own reward. And paradoxically, this makes you better at it. You notice more. You think deeper. You persist longer. You do higher quality work, which means you get better outcomes. Not because you were chasing outcomes, but because you were so focused on the process that excellence emerged naturally. Share the principle. This is the 8th piece. Focus on the process, not the outcome. Love the work, not the rewards. Feynman loved physics. He loved thinking about how the universe worked. He loved solving problems. He loved understanding things. The Nobel Prize was nice, but it wasn't why he did the work. The work itself was why he did the work. And this sustained him for decades. He never burned out because he was never grinding toward a distant goal. He was enjoying the present process. Get direct. Most people have this backwards. They think, once I achieve this outcome, then I'll be happy. Then I'll feel successful. Then I'll enjoy my work. But it doesn't work that way. If you don't enjoy the process, you won't enjoy the outcome either. You'll just set a new goal and start grinding toward that. The winning mind is the one that finds joy in the process. That's intrinsically motivated. That does things because they're interesting, not just because they lead somewhere. Action. What are you doing right now purely for an outcome? What would you stop doing if the reward went away? That's where you're vulnerable. That's where you're not building a winning mind. Now find something you do even if there was no reward. Something you find intrinsically interesting. And spend more time there. That's where your best work will emerge. Let's move to the 9th piece. This is about how Feynman recovered from setbacks. And his approach was completely different from what most people do. Tell this story. Feynman's first wife, Arline, dies of tuberculosis while he's at Los Alamos. He's in his 20s, devastated. This is the person he loved most in the world. And he deals with it in an unusual way. He throws himself into work, but not in a I'm distracting myself from pain way. In a I'm going to honor her by living fully way. He doesn't let grief paralyze him. He doesn't let it define him. He feels it, acknowledges it, and then he keeps moving. 8 posits. Later in life, when people ask him about this, he says something profound. He says, the past is done. I can't change it, but I can change what I do next. So that's where I put my energy. If I explain the principle, this is the 9th piece, move forward from setbacks immediately. Don't dwell, don't ruminate. Feel what you need to feel, then redirect your energy toward what you can control. Most people handle setbacks differently. They get knocked down and they stay down. They replay the failure. They analyze what went wrong. They tell the story of their setback over and over. And what happens? The setback becomes their identity. It becomes the story they tell about themselves. And that story keeps them stuck. Say contrast this here, Feynman experienced setbacks, lost love, wrong predictions, criticized ideas, all the stuff that happens when you're trying to do anything difficult. But he never stayed in those moments. He acknowledged them, learned what he could, and moved forward. His identity wasn't the guy who failed at X. It was the guy who's currently working on Y. Make it actionable. The winning mind doesn't pretend setbacks don't hurt, but it doesn't give them more power than they deserve. It processes them quickly and redirects energy toward the next challenge. What setback are you still carrying? What story of failure are you still telling yourself? Let it go. Not by pretending it didn't happen, but by choosing to make your next chapter more interesting than your last one. That's what Feynman did, again and again, and it kept him winning even when things went wrong. Finally, let's talk about the 10th piece. This is the foundation everything else rests on. Get quiet and serious. Feynman built a mind that never stopped winning because he genuinely didn't care what other people thought about him. Not in an arrogant way, not I'm better than you way, but in a I'm going to be myself regardless of your opinion way. Share this, he plays bongos at a strip club. Colleagues think it's undignified. He doesn't care. He refuses to wear academic robes. Administration thinks it's disrespectful. He doesn't care. He explains things simply instead of using impressive jargon. Some people think it means he's not serious. He doesn't care. He works on problems that interest him instead of problems that are prestigious. Other physicists think he's wasting his talent. He doesn't care. Make the point clear, this freedom, this complete liberation from other people's opinions. This is what allowed him to do everything else. Because when you care what people think, you constrain yourself. You don't take risks. You don't explore weird ideas. You don't admit confusion. You don't change your mind. You don't try new things. You optimize for looking good instead of being good. For appearing smart instead of becoming smarter. For maintaining image instead of growing capability. I get passionate, and that's the death of the winning mind. Because winning requires risk. It requires exploration. It requires being wrong sometimes. It requires trying things that might not work. If you're worried about what people think, you can't do any of that. You're trapped. Safe, maybe. Respectable? Perhaps, but trapped. Feynman was free. And that freedom is what let him build the kind of mind that kept winning for decades. For a final challenge. So here's my question for you. What are you not doing because you're worried about what people will think? What idea are you not exploring? What question are you not asking? What field are you not entering? What risk are you not taking? Pause it. That's your cage. That's what's keeping you from building a winning mind. And the only way out is to stop caring, not to stop being thoughtful or ethical or kind, but to stop letting other people's opinions determine what you do with your one life. I walk to center stage. So let me bring this all together. These are the 10 pieces of how Feynman built a mind that never stopped winning. 1. Radical intellectual independence. Think for yourself from first principles. 2. Embrace confusion. Seek situations where you're a beginner and don't know the answers. 3. Explain everything simply. If you don't really understand it yet. 4. Build and play. Your mind needs it to stay sharp and avoid burnout. 5. Love being wrong. It's data that makes you better. 6. Build a networked mind. Connect everything to everything. 7. Always be a beginner at something. Keep your mind flexible. 8. Focus on process, not outcomes. Love the work itself. 9. Move forward from setbacks immediately. Don't let them become your identity. 10. Stop caring what people think. Be free to explore and risk and try. Slow down, heirs. These aren't complicated. They're not secret. Feynman lived them openly for his entire life. The question is, will you? Because here's what I know. If you adopt even 3 of these pieces, your mind will start changing. You'll notice yourself solving problems you couldn't solve before, making connections you couldn't make before, recovering from setbacks faster, maintaining energy longer. If you adopt all 10, you'll build a mind that keeps winning. Maybe not Nobel Prize winning, but winning at whatever matters to you, and doing it with joy, with curiosity, with growth. At Jet Emotional, Feynman died at 69, cancer, and in his final days someone asked him if he had any regrets. He said, "No. I got to play. I got to understand things. I got to be curious. What more could anyone want? Pause us." That's what these 10 pieces give you. Not just success, not just achievement, but the ability to fully engage with your life, to keep growing until the very end, to stay curious and energized and effective, to build a mind that never stops winning. Final direct address, so pick one piece. Just one. The one that resonated most with you, and start building it into your life this week. Maybe it's explaining things simply. Maybe it's embracing confusion. Maybe it's building in more play. Maybe it's stopping caring what people think. Pick one. Start there, and watch what happens. A fox smile. Your mind is more capable than you know, more flexible than you realize, more powerful than you've ever tapped into. Feynman proved it's possible to build a mind that keeps getting better instead of declining, that keeps winning instead of plateauing. Now it's your turn to prove it to. Thank you. Yes, sir. Beat. And if you want to keep exploring how to build a mind like Feynman's, if you want more specific techniques and practices and insights from his life, do me a favor. Like this video and subscribe to the Mind of Richard Feynman channel. We're breaking down exactly how one of history's greatest minds worked, and showing you how to apply those same principles to your own life. Join us. Let's build winning minds together. See you in the next one.
Physics teaches us that every body tends to remain at rest until an external force acts upon it. The same happens with the mind. It tends toward inertia. If you don't apply the right kind of stimulus, it will always seek the easiest path: distraction, repetition, the illusion of memorization. But when you apply the necessary force, even if it's small, you set movement into motion, and that movement can grow until it becomes unstoppable. Here's the secret. The brain responds far more to small, consistent impulses than to big bursts of energy followed by quitting. It's like pushing a heavy rock at the beginning. The effort seems overwhelming, but once it starts rolling, physics itself works in your favor. That is the power of habit, transforming repeated actions into accumulated energy until your mind becomes a system that moves almost on its own, with far less conscious effort. Behind every thought lies a mechanism shaped over millions of years of physical evolution. The brain was not designed for success. It was designed for survival. It was shaped to avoid danger, to conserve energy, and to repeat the patterns that kept our ancestors alive. But here's the crucial point. Physics allows transformation. The same laws that govern force, friction, rhythm, and leverage can be used to redesign your habits, your focus, and your productivity. The biggest mistake is believing that simply wanting it badly enough is enough. Left to itself, the mind seeks comfort, shortcuts, and excuses. But the very principles that make it conserve energy can be hacked to release power. Reduce unnecessary friction, distractions, repetitive decisions. Create leverage, triggers that multiply minimal effort, and establish rhythm, cycles that generate consistency. When you master these 3 forces, you create an environment where the right action becomes the path of least resistance. Learning means simplifying down to the essential. If you can't explain something clearly, you haven't truly understood it. When you translate a complex idea as if you were teaching it to someone younger, you strip away the noise, uncover gaps in your reasoning, and create smooth surfaces for thought to flow. That clarity is not just intellectual, it transforms behavior, because it illuminates the exact next step. Transformation is not mystical, it is mechanical. You will learn to position points of support, internal and external levers, to smooth out surfaces, remove friction that slows you down, to establish cadence, the rhythm that sustains action, and to build radical clarity, simplicity that reveals the essential. From now on, treat your mind as a physical system. Design, test, measure, refine. That is how you create, with rigor and elegance, a successful mind. Now, picture your mind as an electrical circuit. Every negative thought is like resistance, reducing the flow of energy. Every focused thought is like a clean conductor, letting the current run stronger. When you eliminate noise, useless worries, limiting beliefs, digital distractions, you reduce resistance and increase the power of your own mind. Clarity becomes the perfect conductor, and the result is absolute focus. Physics also shows us the importance of frequency. A steady wave can break through any barrier given enough time. In the same way, when you repeat a practice every day, no matter how small, you create mental vibrations that shape your identity. It's not about brute force. It's about rhythmic consistency. That's why just 10 minutes of daily reading can be more transformative than a single marathon study session. Now, imagine applying this vision to your own brain. You create movement when the mind wants to stop. You channel energy through the paths of least resistance. You establish frequency and rhythm until your identity rewrites itself. This is the invisible engineering of success. It's not about thinking positive, it's about using the very laws of physics to transform your mind into a field of creative energy. When physics meets discipline, the mind stops being a weight that holds you back and becomes the lever that launches you into the future you desire. And here lies the key. Gravity is the invisible force that keeps planets, stars, and galaxies in orbit. Nothing escapes its field of attraction. The same thing happens inside your mind. Every thought you repeat generates a gravitational field that pulls new ideas, emotions, and behaviors in the same direction. If you think small, you create a narrow orbit. If you think big, you expand the universe around you. Pay close attention now, because this is one of the greatest secrets of transformation. Your mind always attracts what resonates with your dominant thoughts. Constantly thinking about failure creates a field where opportunities seem to vanish, as if sucked into a black hole. But focusing on discipline, abundance, and learning generates positive gravity that attracts people, ideas, and paths that once seemed invisible. That is why you must carefully choose the direction of your mental orbit. Negative gravity is treacherous. Thoughts of doubt, fear, and comparison pile up until you become a prisoner of them. But positive gravity is born when you deliberately choose to plant thoughts of action, purpose, and confidence. At first, it's like a small star, fragile, still forming. But as you feed it with consistency, that field grows so strong that everything in your life begins to align with its energy. Now imagine yourself as a planet that can break free from a toxic orbit and enter a new trajectory. To do that, you need escape velocity, and that force is created by the daily repetition of new thoughts until they become stronger than the old ones. It's like igniting a sun inside you. Your gravity changes, your light grows, and what once seemed impossible begins to orbit naturally around you.
Understand this. You don't attract what you desire just once. You attract constantly what your mind feeds on every single day. If you sustain focus, discipline, and a clear vision, you generate a gravitational field so powerful that nothing can stop your rise. And when that happens, it's no longer you chasing victory. its victory being pulled into your orbit. Just as coal only becomes a diamond when it is subjected to enormous pressure, your mind only reaches its strongest form when it faces resistance. It is in friction, in tension, in moments of weight, that the brain stops being just a machine of survival and begins to forge itself into a mind of success. To run away from pressure is to waste the chance to become something rare and valuable. Picture steel being tempered by fire. First, it is heated until it nearly breaks, then plunged into extreme cold to gain hardness. That cycle of extremes is what gives it incomparable strength. The same is true of your mind. Every challenge, every criticism, every apparent failure is part of the forging process. Pain does not come to destroy you, it comes to shape you. Mistakes are not signs of weakness, they are the raw material of growth. Most people chase comfort zones, forgetting that prolonged comfort weakens the mind. Muscles grow because they are subjected to tension, and the mind expands when it is challenged. When you face a problem that feels larger than you, you are actually stretching your limits. And every time you return stronger, you are proving that pressure doesn't destroy you, it polishes you. Now, picture yourself as a diamond in formation. At first, you look like nothing but formless coal, common, dull, without shine. But when life puts you under pressure, debts, criticism, doubt, loss, you face two choices: to shatter into pieces, or to allow that weight to mold you into an unbreakable structure.
The secret is not to resist pressure, but to accept it as an inevitable part of becoming extraordinary. Remember, every obstacle is an invitation to growth. Every voice that doubts you is fuel to prove it wrong. Every fall is the exact moment your mind is being strengthened. It's not about enduring passively, but about transforming each impact into energy, each blow into refinement, each challenge into evolution. This is how you forge, under fire and weight, a mind capable of conquering any victory. Richard Feynman had a simple technique, yet powerful enough to turn any ordinary mind into an extraordinary one. He said that if you truly understood something, you should be able to explain it clearly, even to a child. It seems simple, but it is the master key that opens all doors. When you force yourself to simplify, you expose the holes in your reasoning. You uncover what you really know and what you still need to learn. That is the first secret. Clarity is power. The brain loves to deceive itself, pretending it understands just because it memorized some fancy words. But when you practice simple explanation, you hack this mechanism, strip away the illusions, and force the mind to build real connections. That's how learning becomes solid, and creativity begins to flourish. And this technique is not just for students. It's for anyone who wants to master their own life. Physics also teaches us that every system can be modeled, tested, improved. Your mind is no different. You can create movement when it wants to stop, overcoming inertia. Reduce the friction that holds you back, eliminating distractions. Use frequency to your advantage, daily habits, and generate positive gravity that attracts opportunity, dominant thoughts. And when pressure comes, instead of breaking, you remember, it is fire that turns steel into a sword, and pressure that turns coal into diamond. Now imagine applying Feynman's technique together with these principles of physics. You simplify your goals until they are crystal clear. You test each small action as an experiment. You discard what doesn't work and reinforce what does. In this way, the mind stops behaving chaotically and begins to operate like a system of precision. And the result is inevitable: discipline, focus, productivity, and success. Remember, your brain was not built for success, but for survival. Yet when you apply the principles of physics and the clarity of Feynman's technique, you reprogram the machine. You create a mind that learns faster, acts with confidence, attracts what it desires, and grows stronger with every challenge. That is the path to true transformation, using the science of life to forge an invincible mind, a mind of success. Pay close attention now. In physics, there is a relentless law called entropy. Everything, inevitably, tends toward chaos, and your mind is no exception. Without discipline, it scatters, loses focus, and is carried away by any distraction. That's why so many start with enthusiasm and end up empty, because they never created structures to sustain order. But here's the key. Routines and rituals are the antidote to mental collapse. Picture your mind as a house. If you don't clean it daily, dust piles up, objects get lost, confusion takes over. With the brain, it's the same. A daily reading habit, a fixed time to plan, a moment of silence before beginning work. Every small gesture creates order in the midst of chaos. And the more order you build, the more free energy you have to create, to decide, to act. Discipline doesn't limit you, it sets you free.
Now think with me. When one frequency meets another, both begin to vibrate together. This is the principle of resonance, and your mind works exactly the same way. If you surround yourself with negative people, shallow content, mediocre ideas, your frequency drops and you vibrate at that same level. But when you connect with brilliant minds, powerful words, and inspiring content, your mind resonates at a higher, stronger frequency. But if you connect yourself with brilliant minds, with powerful words, with content that lifts your vision, your mind begins to resonate at another frequency, higher, stronger. That is why choosing what you consume is choosing who you become. Every book you read, every conversation you have, every video you watch is a tuning. And when you adjust your mental dial to the frequency of success, you inevitably begin to vibrate like the greats. Remember, you don't need to be physically next to geniuses. You only need to be in contact with their ideas. That alone is enough for your mind to learn to vibrate as they do. And here lies another secret, the domino effect. A small action triggers a chain reaction. Never underestimate the power of a minimal habit. 5 minutes of study can multiply into an hour of focus. A simple act of gratitude can open the door to an avalanche of positive thoughts. A quick walk can trigger a wave of productivity for the rest of the day. The mind loves continuity, and every domino you push starts a flow that can completely transform your life. Now picture the universe. It does not stop. It does not shrink. It does not retreat. It is always expanding, and so must your mind. When you stop learning, stop questioning, stop challenging yourself, it's as if you were going against the very nature of the cosmos. But when you open yourself to curiosity, to new questions and new answers, your mind expands, grows, occupies territories that once seemed unreachable. Stagnation goes against the natural order of things. Growth is not optional, it is a necessity. And this growth doesn't come from having all the answers, but from never stopping to ask. Every new doubt is like a galaxy forming. Every discovery is a star lighting up in the infinite space of your consciousness. Remember, physics shows us that the universe moves forward, always expanding. Therefore, align your mind with that same movement. Expand your vision, expand your limits, expand your courage. Because when the mind grows without ceasing, the entire life grows along with it. And at that point, you become unstoppable, a universe in expansion, capable of attracting, creating, and transforming everything around you. Now I want you to commit to your mind. Write in the comments, "I decide to evolve every day." That will be your decree to keep expanding your mind daily. If this video spoke to you, like it, subscribe, and turn on the notifications to continue receiving content that transforms. Thank you so much for your attention, and see you next time.
You know what's strange about the way people approach getting things done? They treat it like a battle against time itself. They make lists, they schedule every minute, they push harder and harder until they collapse. And then they wonder why nothing actually gets finished. Here's the real puzzle. The people who seem to accomplish the most aren't the ones grinding away 16 hours a day. They're often working less, enjoying it more, and producing work that actually matters. How is that possible? The answer isn't what you think. It's not about willpower or discipline or managing your time better. Those things help, sure, but they're missing the fundamental principle. The real secret is understanding what work actually is at the level of your brain. Let's start with what everyone gets wrong. When you sit down to work, you probably think the goal is to spend time working. That's the first mistake. Time spent is not the same as work done. You can sit at a desk for 8 hours and accomplish almost nothing. We've all done it. The second mistake is even more subtle. People think that if they just eliminate distractions, they'll be productive. So they find a quiet room, they close the door, they clear their desk, and then nothing happens. Or worse, something does happen, but it's the wrong thing. They spend 3 hours perfecting something that doesn't matter. Why? Because productivity isn't about removing obstacles. It's about understanding how the brain actually processes work. And the brain has some very particular rules about what it can and cannot do. Here's the first principle. The brain can only hold about 3 or 4 distinct ideas at once in active thought, not more. That's not a limitation we can overcome with practice. That's architecture. When you try to think about too many things simultaneously, the brain doesn't just slow down, it starts making errors. It drops pieces. It confuses relationships between ideas. Now watch what happens when someone tries to be productive without understanding this. They make a list with 20 items. They tell themselves they'll work on all of them today. Maybe they even assign time blocks. 9 to 10, work on the report. 10 to 11, respond to correspondence. 11 to 12, plan next week. But here's what actually happens in the brain. Every time you switch between tasks, there's a setup cost. The brain has to clear out the current problem, load in the new problem, retrieve the relevant context, and rebuild the mental model. That takes energy and time. If you're switching every hour, you're spending a huge fraction of your day just loading and unloading mental states. The really productive people, they don't do this. They work on one thing, maybe 2 if they're related, for as long as the problem demands. They let the brain build up a full, rich model of the problem space. And once that model is built, the brain can do something remarkable. It can work on the problem even when you're not consciously thinking about it. You've experienced this. You work hard on something, get stuck, go for a walk, and suddenly the solution appears. That's not magic. That's the brain continuing to process in the background. But it can only do this if you've given it enough focused time to build the model in the first place. Here's the second principle. Real work happens in bursts, not in steady streams. The brain has different modes of operation. There's a focused mode where you're actively manipulating ideas, and there's a diffuse mode where connections form more loosely. Both are necessary. Neither is optional. Think about reading a difficult technical book. You can't just read for 6 hours straight and expect to understand it. What actually works is reading intensely for an hour, then doing something completely different, walking, washing dishes, staring at the ceiling. During that diffuse time, the brain is consolidating what you learned, finding connections, moving information into longer-term storage. But people don't structure their work this way. They think breaks are wasted time, so they push through, staying in focused mode until their brain simply refuses to cooperate anymore. And then they wonder why they're exhausted but haven't learned anything. The truly productive approach is different. Work intensely on one problem for 60 to 90 minutes. Not sort of working, not working while distracted, but really focusing every available mental resource on that single problem. Then stop. Completely stop. Do something that requires no mental effort at all. What happens during that break is critical. The brain reviews what just happened. It strengthens the important connections and weakens the irrelevant ones. It finds patterns you didn't consciously notice. When you come back to the work, you're not just rested, you actually understand the problem better than you did before the break. Now here's where it gets interesting. The third principle, the brain is remarkably good at knowing what's important, but only if you let it. There's a natural filtering system that sorts problems by urgency and significance. But this system gets overridden when you try to force everything to be equally important. Watch what happens when someone makes a list of 20 tasks and tries to treat them all as critical. The brain can't do it. It rebels. It chooses randomly, or it procrastinates on everything, or it picks the easiest tasks rather than the important ones. Why? Because when everything is urgent, nothing is urgent. The natural filtering system shuts down. The solution is counterintuitive. Instead of trying to do everything, explicitly decide that most things won't get done today. Pick one, maybe two, genuinely important problems. Tell yourself clearly and deliberately, these are the only things that matter today. Everything else can wait. The brain needs this. It needs to know where to allocate resources. Once you give it clear priorities, something remarkable happens. All that worry about the other tasks fades away. The brain stops spending energy maintaining those other mental states, and suddenly you have much more capacity available for the actual work. But here's the crucial part. Those one or two tasks have to be real work, not administrative shuffling. Real work means grappling with problems that don't have obvious solutions. Writing something new, figuring out why an experiment failed, designing something that's never been designed before, the kind of thing where you have to think. Most of what people call being busy isn't this. It's responding to correspondence, attending meetings, reorganizing files, making plans. These things feel like work because they consume time and energy, but they're not work in the deep sense. They're maintenance, and maintenance expands to fill whatever time you give it. Here's the fourth principle. The brain needs to see progress, not just activity. There's a feedback system that monitors whether effort is leading to results. When that system sees progress, it releases energy and motivation to continue. When it doesn't see progress, it shuts down. This is why people get stuck in procrastination loops. They start working on something difficult. It doesn't come together immediately. The brain's monitoring system says, "This isn't working. Let's try something easier." So they switch to checking correspondence or tidying their desk or planning. Those activities feel productive because they complete quickly. The brain gets its progress signal, and it feels good, but nothing important actually happened. And eventually, the brain notices this too. The result is a peculiar kind of exhaustion. You worked all day, you were busy all day, but you can't point to anything meaningful that got done. The way out is to change how you define progress. For difficult work, progress isn't finishing. Progress is understanding the problem better than you did an hour ago. Progress is trying an approach and discovering why it doesn't work. Progress is writing a rough version that you know isn't right yet, but that makes the problem concrete. Once you redefine progress this way, the brain's feedback system works with you instead of against you. You work for 90 minutes, and even if you didn't solve the problem, you understand it better. That's progress. The brain registers it as such and stays engaged. This connects to something deeper about how understanding actually develops. You can't force understanding. You can't schedule it. What you can do is put yourself in a position where understanding can happen. That means engaging repeatedly with a problem, looking at it from different angles, trying things that don't work, building intuition slowly. Think about learning physics or mathematics or any complex skill. The people who actually master it don't just study harder. They study differently. They work problems until they get stuck. Then they think about why they got stuck. They try to explain concepts in their own words. They look for multiple ways to approach the same idea. This takes time. It takes many sessions of focused work with breaks in between. But it produces something that memorization and grinding never can. Genuine understanding that stays with you and applies to new situations. Now, here's what all of this means for being productive. Real productivity isn't about doing more things. It's about making progress on things that actually matter. And to do that, you need to work with your brain's architecture instead of against it. Start by identifying one problem worth solving. Not 10, not 5, one. Something where progress would actually change things. Then clear away everything else, not forever, just for the next 90 minutes. During those 90 minutes, focus completely. No half attention, no checking other things, no multitasking. Just you and the problem. Work until you get tired or stuck, whichever comes first. Don't push past that point. The tired brain doesn't produce good work. It produces work that you'll have to redo. When you stop, really stop. Go for a walk. Make something to eat. Do anything that requires no significant mental effort. Don't feel guilty about this. This is part of the work. During this time, your brain is consolidating, connecting, preparing for the next session. Then, and only then, come back for another focused session. With a fresh brain, the problem often looks different. Solutions that weren't visible before become obvious. Approaches that seemed impossibly complex become manageable. Do this pattern twice, maybe 3 times in a day, and you'll accomplish more than most people do in a week of scattered effort. Not because you worked longer, but because you worked with purpose and with an understanding of how the brain actually functions. The people who seem impossibly productive aren't superhuman. They're not more disciplined or more motivated. They've just figured out this pattern, consciously or unconsciously. They protect their focus. They work on one thing at a time. They take real breaks, and they trust that the brain will do its job if they give it the right conditions. There's one more crucial piece to this. You have to become comfortable with leaving things undone. Not important things. Those get your focused attention. But all the small tasks, the administrative details, the things that could be done but don't really matter, these have to wait. This is harder than it sounds. We're taught that being responsible means handling everything promptly, but that's backwards. Being truly responsible means recognizing what's important and protecting your ability to do it well. Everything else is just noise. When you work this way, something unusual happens. You stop feeling busy all the time. Instead, you feel calm and focused during work sessions and genuinely relaxed during breaks. And at the end of the week, you look back and realize you accomplished more than you used to in a month. That's what real productivity feels like. Not like grinding, not like forcing yourself, not like battling against time. It feels like the natural result of understanding how the brain works and cooperating with it. The question isn't whether you can be this productive. You can. The question is whether you're willing to work differently than everyone around you, to focus on one thing when others are juggling 10, to take breaks when others are pushing through, to leave minor tasks undone when others are scrambling to handle everything. It takes confidence to work this way. You'll look like you're doing less, but you'll know something that others don't. Real work isn't measured in hours or tasks completed. It's measured in problems solved, in understanding gained, in things created that didn't exist before. That's the kind of productivity that matters. That's the kind that compounds over time, building on itself, creating something genuinely new. And it's available to anyone who's willing to stop fighting their brain and start working with it instead. Try this tomorrow. Pick one problem, give it 90 minutes of complete focus. Take a real break. Come back fresh. See what happens. You might be surprised at how much is possible when you stop trying to do everything and start doing something that matters. There's something else that happens when you work this way. Something that takes longer to notice but matters more than anything else. The quality of your thinking changes. When you're constantly scattered, jumping between tasks, always half distracted, your brain never gets to go deep. You stay on the surface of problems. You find the obvious solutions, the conventional approaches, the things everyone else would think of. There's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing remarkable about it either. But when you give your brain extended time with a single problem, something different becomes possible. After the first 30 minutes, you exhaust the obvious approaches. After 60 minutes, you start seeing patterns that weren't visible before. After 90 minutes, if you're really focused, you sometimes reach a state where the problem starts revealing its own structure. This is where the interesting work lives. Not in the first answer that comes to mind, but in the 5th or 6th attempt after you've tried the simple approaches and found them wanting. That's when you have to actually think, when you have to look at the problem from angles that aren't immediately obvious. Most people never reach this depth because they don't stay with any single problem long enough. They get uncomfortable with not having an immediate answer, so they move on to something easier, or they get interrupted and lose the thread entirely. Either way, they stay forever on the surface. The irony is that the surface is where everyone else is working too. So if you stay there, you're competing with everyone. Your work looks like everyone else's work. Your solutions are the same solutions everyone else finds. There's no advantage to be gained. But go deeper, stay focused longer, and you're suddenly in territory where few people ever venture. Not because it's forbidden or difficult to access, but simply because it requires sustained attention. And most people don't give themselves permission to work that way. This is where the compound effects start to appear. Each time you solve a problem at depth, you build intuition about how those kinds of problems work. The next time you face something similar, you start deeper than you did before. Over months and years, this adds up. You develop a way of seeing problems that others don't have. This isn't about being smarter. It's about being willing to sit with difficulty long enough to see through it. Anyone can develop this capacity. It just requires protecting your focus consistently over time. There's a final piece worth understanding. When you work with genuine focus, you're not just getting things done. You're training your brain to focus. The ability to concentrate is like a muscle. It strengthens with use and weakens without it. Every time you maintain focus, despite the urge to check something else, you're making it easier to focus next time. This means the method gets easier the longer you use it. The first few times, 90 minutes of unbroken focus might feel nearly impossible. Your brain will fight you, offering up every distraction and excuse, but stay with it, and within weeks, that same focus starts to feel natural. Eventually, it becomes your default mode rather than something you have to force. That's when productivity stops feeling like work and starts feeling like inevitability. You sit down, focus comes naturally, problems yield to sustained attention, and meaningful work happens almost effortlessly. Not because the work got easier, but because you've trained yourself to engage with it properly. This is what's possible when you stop treating productivity as time management and start treating it as attention management. Everything flows from that one shift in understanding. Here's something that doesn't make sense. People set goals all the time. They write them down, they think about them, they tell their friends about them, and then nothing happens. The goal sits there like a piece of furniture in a room nobody uses. What's going on? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not about willpower. It's not about wanting it badly enough. The real problem is that goals and actions live in different worlds, and most people never build the bridge between them. Think about what a goal actually is. It's a description of a future state. I want to learn physics. I want to write a book. I want to be in better shape. These are descriptions, nothing more. And here's the peculiar thing. The brain doesn't know what to do with descriptions. The brain works with actions, with sequences, with patterns of behavior that can be executed right now. When someone says, "I want to learn physics," they're holding a photograph of a destination. But there's no map, there's no sequence of steps. There's just this image of being somewhere other than where they are. And then they wonder why they're not making progress. This confusion runs deeper than most people realize. Goals feel productive. Writing them down feels like you're doing something. Thinking about them creates a little burst of satisfaction, almost as if the future you've imagined is already starting to become real. But that feeling is a trick. The brain can't tell the difference between imagining something vividly and actually doing it, not completely. So you get a small reward from just thinking about the goal, which actually reduces the motivation to pursue it. What you need instead is something entirely different. Not goals, but systems. And the difference between these two things is fundamental. A system is a repeating pattern of behavior that exists in time. It's not a destination, it's a process that happens on a schedule. Every Monday and Thursday at 7 in the morning, you sit down with your physics textbook for 1 hour. That's a system. It has a time, a place, a specific action, and a trigger that sets it in motion. The system doesn't care about the distant future. It only cares about what happens next Monday at 7. Here's why this matters. The brain is extraordinarily good at learning patterns and executing them automatically. Give it a consistent sequence, same time, same place, same action, and after a few repetitions, the system starts running itself. You don't have to decide whether to study physics on Monday morning. The decision was made when you designed the system. Monday morning arrives, and the behavior unfolds. This is how we actually do things in the world. Not through constant acts of will, but through the construction of reliable machinery that operates whether we feel like it or not. Now, building these systems requires understanding something specific about how behavior works. Every action has three components: a cue, a routine, and a consequence. The cue triggers the behavior, the routine is the behavior itself, and the consequence determines whether the behavior will be repeated. Most people ignore the cue entirely. They think if they just remember to do something, they'll do it. But memory is unreliable, especially when you're busy or tired. What you need is an external trigger, something in the environment that automatically prompts the action. The most powerful cues are time and place. This is why scheduling matters. Not because time is magical, but because a clock is a reliable external signal. 7 o'clock Monday morning happens whether you think about it or not. The clock hand arrives at the right position, and that physical fact in the world can trigger your behavior. Place works the same way. If you always study at the same desk, in the same chair, that location becomes associated with the activity. You sit down, and the brain says, "Oh, this is where we do physics problems." The behavior becomes attached to the space. This is why people who exercise at the same gym, at the same time, have much better success than people who say, "I'll exercise when I have time." When you have time is not a cue, it's a wish. 7 o'clock at the gym on Tuesday, that's a cue. The routine itself needs to be specific and small. This is where most systems fail. People design routines that are too ambitious. I'm going to study physics for 3 hours every day. That sounds impressive, but it's probably unsustainable. What happens when you're tired? When something unexpected comes up? The system breaks, and once it breaks, it's hard to restart. Better to design a routine that's almost too easy. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Something you could do even on your worst day. The consistency matters more than the duration. Do 15 minutes every single day, and in a month you've accumulated 7.5 hours. Miss 3 days, and you've started the process of abandoning the system entirely. There's a principle here that's worth understanding. Small actions, repeated consistently, compound over time in ways that large sporadic efforts do not. If you write 1 page every day, you have a manuscript in a year. If you wait for inspiration and then write 20 pages, you'll probably wait forever. The brain learns from repetition. Every time you execute the behavior, you're strengthening the neural pathways that make that behavior easier to execute next time. This is physical. Neurons that fire together wire together. The more you repeat the pattern, the more automatic it becomes, until eventually the behavior requires almost no conscious effort at all. But here's something subtle. The consequence of the behavior needs to be immediately reinforcing, at least a little bit. This is tricky because most meaningful goals have their payoff far in the future. Learning physics takes years. Writing a book takes months. The benefits aren't immediate, so you need to engineer immediate consequences. The simplest way is to track the behavior itself. Keep a calendar. Mark an X on every day you execute the system. After a few weeks, you'll have a chain of X's, and there's something satisfying about not breaking that chain. The chain becomes its own reward. Some people use a physical object. Move a marble from one jar to another every time you complete the routine. Some people use a simple notebook where they write 1 sentence about what they did. The specific method doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a small, immediate reinforcement that says, "You did the thing." This creates a feedback loop. The cue triggers the routine produces the consequence, and the consequence makes you more likely to respond to the cue next time. After enough repetitions, the entire sequence becomes automatic. You no longer need willpower. The system runs itself. Now, there's a deeper principle underneath all of this. Goals are about outcomes, but outcomes are not directly controllable. You can't decide to have learned physics. You can't decide to have written a book. These things are emergent properties of thousands of small actions accumulated over time. What you can control is your behavior in this moment. Right now, you can decide to open a textbook. You can decide to write a paragraph. You can decide to do 20 push-ups. The immediate action is always within your power. Systems shift your attention from outcomes to processes. Instead of asking, "Have I achieved the goal?" you ask, "Did I execute the system today?" And that second question has a clear, immediate answer. Either you did it or you didn't. There's no ambiguity, no waiting around for future results. This changes the psychology completely. With goals, you're always measuring yourself against something you haven't accomplished yet. You're always falling short until the moment you succeed, and that moment might be months or years away. With systems, you succeed every single day you execute the behavior. The success is immediate and tangible. This isn't just philosophical. It affects motivation in a concrete way. The brain releases dopamine not when you achieve distant goals, but when you make progress toward them. Every time you execute your system, you're creating a small win, and small wins produce the neurochemical reward that keeps you going. There's another aspect to this that's worth thinking about. Systems free up mental resources that goals consume. When you have a goal, part of your mind is constantly monitoring your progress, worrying about whether you're doing enough, feeling anxious about the gap between where you are and where you want to be. This monitoring takes energy. With a system, there's nothing to monitor except whether you did today's routine. Either you studied physics for 20 minutes this morning, or you didn't. That's it. No need to calculate how many more years of study you need. No need to compare yourself to others. No need to worry about the ultimate outcome. Just execute the system and move on with your day. This mental simplification is powerful. It reduces decision fatigue. It eliminates the constant internal debate about whether to do the thing. Monday at 7, you study physics. There's no decision to make. But let's be clear about something. Systems aren't magic. Building a system takes thought and planning. You need to understand your own patterns. When do you have consistent time available? Where can you work without interruption? What cues already exist in your environment that you can leverage? Some people are naturally structured. They wake up at the same time every day, eat at the same time, follow predictable routines. For these people, adding a new system is relatively straightforward. Find a slot in the existing pattern and insert the new behavior. Other people have lives that are more chaotic. Different schedule every day, unexpected demands, lots of interruptions. For these people, building systems is harder, but even more important. You need to find the stable points, the times or places that are reliably available, and build your systems around those anchor points. Maybe you can't control when you wake up, but you always eat lunch. Okay, the 15 minutes after lunch is when you read. Maybe your evenings are unpredictable, but you always commute home from work. Use that time. The specific implementation doesn't matter. What matters is finding the reliable patterns in your life and attaching new behaviors to them. There's also the question of multiple systems. Can you maintain several at once? The answer is yes, but with a caveat. Each system requires a certain amount of mental overhead until it becomes automatic. If you try to install 5 new behaviors simultaneously, you'll probably fail at all of them. Better to build systems sequentially. Start with 1. Execute it consistently for several weeks until it becomes automatic. Then add another. The first system is now running on autopilot, so you have mental resources available to establish the second one. Build your life this way, one system at a time, and after a year or two, you'll have a collection of automated behaviors that produce enormous cumulative results. Here's where this gets interesting. Once you have several systems running, they start to interact. The system where you exercise every morning gives you more energy, which makes the system where you study in the evening easier to maintain. The system where you read for 20 minutes before bed improves your thinking, which makes your work system more effective. This is compound interest, but for behavior. Each system produces benefits that amplify the effects of your other systems. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And there's something else. Systems create identity. When you execute a behavior consistently, you start to see yourself as the kind of person who does that thing. You're not someone who wants to learn physics. You're someone who studies physics every Monday and Thursday morning. That's who you are. This identity shift is subtle but profound. Identity shapes behavior more powerfully than goals ever could. Now, what about the goals themselves? Should you abandon them entirely? Not exactly. Goals are useful as direction indicators. They tell you which systems to build. If your goal is to learn physics, that suggests building a system around regular study. If your goal is to write a book, that suggests building a system around daily writing. The goal provides direction, but the system provides movement. You need both. The mistake is focusing on the goal at the expense of the system, or worse, thinking that setting the goal is itself an accomplishment. There's a final piece to this that ties everything together. Systems work because they align with how the brain actually operates. The brain is not a rational planning engine. It's a pattern-matching machine that learns from repetition and responds to cues in the environment. When you try to achieve goals through willpower and decision-making, you're fighting against the brain's natural operating system. You're trying to consciously control every action, every day, forever. That's exhausting, and it doesn't work for long. When you build systems, you're working with the brain's natural machinery. You're installing patterns that become automatic. You're using external cues to trigger behavior instead of relying on memory and will. You're creating immediate feedback loops that reinforce the behavior. You're doing what the brain is already designed to do. This is why systems work when goals fail. Not because systems are more powerful, but because they're compatible with the way behavior actually operates in the physical machinery of the brain. So here's what you do. Take the goal that's been sitting in your mind like unused furniture. Ask yourself, what specific behavior, repeated regularly, would move me toward this? What time and place could I attach this behavior to? What cue would trigger it reliably? How can I make the behavior small enough that I could do it on my worst day? Design the system. Write it down. Be specific. Not I'll study more, but every Monday and Thursday at 7 a.m., I sit at my kitchen table with my physics textbook for 20 minutes. Then execute it. Do it once. Then do it again. Then keep doing it until you don't have to think about it anymore. Until Monday morning arrives and you're at the kitchen table with the textbook before you've fully woken up. That's when you know the system is working. Build systems like this, one at a time, and something remarkable happens. The life you wanted to live, the one you described with your goals, starts to emerge naturally from the systems you've built. Not because you forced it into existence, but because you constructed reliable machinery that generates the right behaviors automatically. The future you imagined wasn't wrong. You just needed to understand that futures aren't destinations you arrive at. They're patterns of behavior extended through time. Build the right patterns, and the future builds itself. If this made you think differently about how to approach what you want to accomplish, hit subscribe. There's more to explore about how thinking clearly changes everything.